One of the most powerful aspects of Mary's story is her unwavering faith, which began from the very moment an angel appeared before her. Imagine a young woman living an ordinary life suddenly confronted with the extraordinary a divine message that she would conceive and give birth to the Son of God. The shock, the disbelief, and the weight of such a revelation must have been immense, yet Mary's response was not one of fear, doubt, or hesitation. Instead, with a calm yet profound humility, she simply replied, "I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled." This moment captures the purest form of faith, one that trusts without having all the details, one that accepts uncertainty with openness and embraces God's plan, even if it means stepping into the unknown. Mary's yes to God, however, was not limited to that singular moment of revelation. Her faithfulness required continuous affirmation throughout her life. When she and Joseph fled to Egypt, urgently escaping King Herod's wrath, she again said yes. Facing danger, uncertainty, and the emotional turmoil of protecting her newborn child, Mary didn't falter. She relied on the same deep trust that guided her initial acceptance. Raising Jesus, aware of his divine identity, yet watching him grow as an ordinary child, was another silent everyday commitment to nurturing him, grounded in faith. Even when witnessing profound moments such as Jesus performing his first miracle, or enduring painful ones like seeing him rejected by those closest to them, Mary's yes continued unwaveringly. Perhaps the most harrowing affirmation of her faith occurred at the foot of the cross, as she watched her son suffer and ultimately die. At this heartbreaking scene, where despair and confusion could have easily consumed her, Mary remained rooted in faith, trusting that God's plan, though incomprehensible at that moment, was still unfolding. This ongoing, steadfast trust in God's intentions defines Mary's spiritual journey. It reminds us that genuine faith isn't passive or limited to one dramatic act of acceptance, but is instead active, dynamic, and constantly renewed through life's trials and triumphs. Mary's journey serves as an enduring model for all believers who face uncertainty. Her story reassures us that it's okay not to know every step of our path clearly. Faith means continuing to trust that God is leading, even when the future is hidden from view. Mary's life, thus, teaches us a powerful truth about faith. It's less about complete understanding and more about complete trust. Just as Mary didn't demand explanations or assurances, we too are invited to embrace uncertainty, knowing that God holds the full picture. Her unwavering commitment challenges and encourages us to reflect on our own journeys. When faced with the unknown, confusion, or hardship, do we respond with fear or with faith? Mary's example inspires us toward the latter, prompting each of us to ask ourselves, where in my life am I called to say yes today, even if the outcome isn't clear? In answering this question, we, like Mary, have the chance to step boldly into God's unfolding purpose, guided by trust rather than sight. Another profound aspect of Mary's story is the deep and lasting influence she had on Jesus himself. While we often focus primarily on Jesus' divine nature, his humanity is equally essential, and Mary was instrumental in shaping this aspect of his identity. Consider the home environment Mary created for Jesus, one defined by authentic love, compassion, kindness, and forgiveness. These weren't abstract concepts taught through mere words. They were values actively lived out each day by Mary herself, creating a powerful example for Jesus to follow from his earliest years. Imagine Jesus as a young child, observing his mother interacting with neighbors, extending kindness, forgiving those who wronged her, and consistently placing her trust in God's promises. Such daily examples profoundly shaped Jesus' character and teachings. When Jesus later spoke of compassion, mercy, forgiveness, and love, he drew upon genuine experiences from the home Mary cultivated. The foundation of his message wasn't merely divine inspiration. It was also deeply human, formed through real-life demonstrations of grace and kindness. Mary's influence went beyond passive nurturing. She actively participated in guiding and encouraging Jesus at pivotal moments. A significant example occurred during the wedding at Cana, when Mary confidently urged Jesus to perform his first miracle. Her simple yet profound instruction to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you," reflected deep belief and unwavering trust in Jesus' divine mission. In this moment, Mary wasn't just prompting a miracle, she was signaling to Jesus that she believed in his readiness to reveal his true identity to the world. Moreover, Mary modeled emotional strength, resilience, and faithfulness in the face of immense adversity. She stood by Jesus, even during painful moments of rejection and misunderstanding from his community. Her constant presence provided emotional and spiritual stability, reinforcing the values of perseverance and steadfast faith. The pinnacle of her influential role emerged dramatically at the crucifixion, where she remained steadfast by his side, a silent yet powerful testament to unwavering love and commitment. Witnessing his mother's strength and trust, even in such overwhelming sorrow, would have undoubtedly impacted Jesus deeply. Mary's role highlights a crucial lesson for us today. Our influence profoundly shapes the people around us, especially those closest to us. Just as Mary's daily actions and enduring faith shaped Jesus, we too have the power to influence others profoundly through our choices, behaviors, and responses to life's challenges. This influence can often be subtle, unnoticed day to day, yet powerful enough to alter someone's perspective or guide their path. Reflecting on Mary's relationship with Jesus encourages us to consider our own lives. Who is watching us? Whose life are we actively shaping through our actions and words? Mary's story inspires us to live intentionally, understanding that our everyday lives serve as an example to others, potentially guiding and empowering them toward their own purpose. Like Mary, our ongoing commitment to living out our values authentically can leave a lasting legacy, significantly impacting the lives and journeys of those around us. Another compelling dimension of Mary's story is the complexity and emotional depth of her life's journey. Often, when we think about Mary, we might imagine only the peaceful nativity scene, with Mary gently holding baby Jesus in the manger. However, the reality of her life was far richer, filled with both profound joys and intense hardships, making her faith even more remarkable. From the joyous announcement of Jesus' birth by the angel to the immediate challenges she faced afterward, Mary's life was anything but simple. Her journey was defined by dramatic highs and lows. Consider the initial joy and awe of holding her miraculous child contrasted sharply with the terrifying urgency of fleeing to Egypt to protect his life from King Herod. This sudden shift from comfort and familiarity to uncertainty and danger tested her deeply, yet her faith remained resilient. In Egypt, Mary lived as an exile, separated from her community and family, navigating a foreign culture, language, and environment. These years must have been filled with uncertainty, challenges, and perhaps loneliness. Yet within this difficult period, Mary discovered profound spiritual growth. Instead of succumbing to despair or frustration, she leaned into her trust in God, allowing the hardships to strengthen her faith rather than weaken it. Mary's return to Nazareth brought new complexities. As Jesus grew, Mary experienced the ordinary joys and frustrations of motherhood. She felt pride witnessing his first steps and first words, and experienced joy in the simplicity of daily family life. However, she also navigated the tension of raising a child who was divinely destined yet humanly vulnerable. Imagine her emotions when Jesus began his public ministry. Pride and joy mingled with a mother's concern as she watched him face rejection and misunderstanding. Perhaps the greatest emotional trial of Mary's life came when she witnessed Jesus' crucifixion. This was undoubtedly the darkest moment, a heartbreak difficult to fathom. Yet, even in her deepest sorrow, she remained at the foot of the cross, demonstrating immense emotional courage and unwavering faith. Mary didn't retreat from her pain. She embraced it as part of a greater plan, believing God's promises despite the overwhelming suffering she witnessed. Mary's story powerfully illustrates that faith does not mean a life free from hardship. Rather, faith is trusting God's purpose amidst both joy and pain, finding strength in uncertainty and maintaining hope when everything feels unclear. Her life's journey was marked by transitions that required her to adapt, grow, and continually reaffirm her trust in God's plan, even when that plan seemed hidden or confusing. Her experiences resonate deeply with our own lives. We too face seasons of joy, moments of profound happiness, and periods of overwhelming difficulty. Mary's life encourages us to find meaning and purpose not only in moments of triumph, but also during times of trial. Her example reminds us that even our darkest moments can lead to deeper growth, greater faith, and ultimately, a richer understanding of God's presence and purpose in our lives. Mary's journey thus offers profound encouragement, reminding us that faith perseveres not in the absence of difficulty, but in the courageous embrace of life's complex realities. One of the most insightful aspects of Mary's story is how her physical journey paralleled her spiritual growth, particularly through her significant transitions and relocations. Often, we think of Mary's journeys from Bethlehem to Egypt, then eventually back to Nazareth, as merely practical moves driven by external circumstances. However, these travels were deeply symbolic, representing more than mere geographical changes. They mirrored her profound inner journey toward greater faith, trust, and spiritual maturity. The journey to Egypt, initiated by an urgent and terrifying warning from Joseph about King Herod's threats, was not simply a desperate flight to safety. It symbolized a deeper spiritual movement into trust and reliance on God. Leaving behind all familiarity, home, community, family support, Mary stepped into uncertainty. Egypt was a foreign land, culturally and religiously distinct, requiring adaptability, resilience, and deep faith. Here, in this unfamiliar place, God profoundly shaped and strengthened Mary's character. In Egypt, Mary experienced what many of us face during significant transitions: the challenge of living in uncertainty, waiting, and dependence on God's provision. This experience wasn't just about survival, it was about deep spiritual preparation. Egypt represented a season in which Mary learned firsthand to rely entirely on God's guidance, presence, and protection. Far from being a passive exile, Mary actively engaged in a process of transformation, growing spiritually as she confronted daily challenges and unknown circumstances. When the time came to return to Nazareth, this journey was not merely a physical homecoming, but also a spiritual progression. Returning home marked another significant stage in Mary's spiritual journey. She had matured through hardship, gained wisdom through uncertainty, and deepened her trust through experience. Each relocation had purposefully prepared her for what lay ahead: the complex realities of raising Jesus, supporting his ministry, and ultimately enduring the profound trials that awaited her at the crucifixion. Mary's journey challenges us to view our own life transitions differently. Often we perceive periods of uncertainty or waiting as unproductive, even frustrating. Yet Mary's life teaches us that these seasons are precisely when God does his deepest work in us, preparing us spiritually for future challenges and opportunities. Just as Mary's stay in Egypt became a period of intense spiritual growth and preparation, our moments of transition, whether literal relocations or emotional and spiritual shifts, can likewise become opportunities for profound personal and spiritual transformation. Reflecting on Mary's story invites us to reconsider our perspectives on life's uncertain or seemingly uncomfortable seasons. Rather than resisting or resenting these times, we are encouraged to embrace them as purposeful chapters within God's greater narrative for our lives. The places we find ourselves in, even unexpectedly or reluctantly, are often exactly where God intends for us to grow, learn, and deepen our trust in Him. Thus, Mary's journey from Bethlehem to Egypt and eventually back to Nazareth provides more than historical context. It serves as a powerful metaphor for the spiritual journeys each of us undergoes. It reassures us that wherever we find ourselves in places of uncertainty, waiting, or hardship, we are being shaped by God's purposeful hand, prepared for something greater than we can presently understand. An often overlooked yet powerful element of Mary's life is the rich heritage and spiritual legacy that prepared her for her extraordinary role. When we think of Mary, our minds typically focus on her encounter with the angel Gabriel or her journey to Bethlehem. However, her story actually began long before these events. Mary wasn't randomly chosen. She came from a lineage deeply woven with divine purpose, marked by generations of faithfulness and devotion to God. Tradition holds that Mary's own mother, Anna, experienced a miraculous birth after years of barrenness, highlighting the divine hand guiding Mary's lineage even before her birth. This powerful legacy of faith and perseverance deeply influenced Mary, grounding her in a profound trust in God that shaped her responses throughout life. She was born into a family whose spiritual resilience, humility, and obedience to God laid the foundation for her exceptional capacity to trust and accept her calling, even amid uncertainty and trials. Mary's significant role extended well beyond Jesus' birth. Her spiritual legacy became evident throughout Jesus' life and even into the formation of the early Christian community. At the wedding in Cana, Mary displayed unwavering faith in Jesus' divine identity, confidently encouraging him to perform his first public miracle. This wasn't merely a mother's instinct, it was evidence of her deep understanding of Jesus' divine mission and her readiness to actively support and encourage his ministry. Her legacy continued through her courageous presence at Jesus' crucifixion. Standing by the cross, Mary exemplified an extraordinary strength of character and spiritual resilience that served as a powerful testimony to the early believers. Her presence in such profound suffering became a testament of steadfast faith, providing an enduring example of unwavering trust in God amidst unimaginable adversity. Moreover, after Jesus' resurrection, Mary remained an integral part of the early church, gathering with apostles and believers in prayer and worship. Her influence didn't fade after Jesus' earthly life concluded. Instead, she continued to shape the emerging Christian community profoundly. Her ongoing involvement illustrates the depth and longevity of her faithfulness, demonstrating that her calling was not limited to one miraculous event, but encompassed an enduring, influential legacy. Mary's spiritual heritage and active involvement in early Christianity remind us that our lives are also interconnected with generations before and after us. Her example encourages us to consider our own spiritual legacies, what we inherit from those who came before us, and what we will leave behind. Mary's story urges us to recognize that our daily choices and steadfastness in faith can profoundly impact future generations. As we reflect on Mary's life, we are called to embrace our roles actively within our spiritual communities, understanding that our lives, like hers, are part of something far greater. Mary's lasting legacy challenges us to live intentionally, faithfully, and courageously, knowing that our influence extends far beyond our immediate circumstances. In embracing this perspective, we recognize that our own stories, deeply rooted in a heritage of faith, have the potential to inspire, encourage, and shape generations to come. Mary's story offers powerful insights into how we can actively apply the lessons of faith, trust, and courage to our own lives today. One of the most striking elements of Mary's journey is how clearly it connects to our personal experiences. Her life was not merely a series of miraculous events disconnected from reality, but rather a vivid example of active, everyday faith lived out amid both joyful celebrations and intense hardships. At the core of Mary's journey was her continuous willingness to say yes to God, even without understanding the full scope of His plans. This profound trust was more than just a singular act. It required ongoing commitment, daily reaffirmation, and active participation in God's unfolding purpose. Similarly, our lives often bring moments when we are called to step into uncertainty, embracing challenges without knowing the complete picture or outcome. Mary's example encourages us to respond not with hesitation or fear, but with confident trust in God's guidance. In moments of confusion, fear, or uncertainty, Mary chose faith over fear, illustrating that trust in God isn't passive resignation but an active, courageous stand. Her life inspires us to examine our own hearts and consider the places where God is inviting us to say yes without knowing all the details. Perhaps it's a difficult decision, a significant change, or simply the everyday commitment to remain faithful amidst life's unpredictability. Mary's consistent yes encourages us to embrace uncertainty confidently, trusting that each step we take is part of God's greater plan. Furthermore, Mary's influence reminds us of the profound impact we have on those around us. Her intentional living, grounded in faith and compassion, profoundly shaped Jesus' own ministry. This truth challenges us to recognize the power of our everyday actions and attitudes. Just as Mary modeled grace, compassion, and trust, we too have opportunities to influence our families, friends, colleagues, and communities positively. Our faith, expressed through genuine kindness, forgiveness, and love, can deeply affect those observing our lives, shaping their own journeys in ways we might never fully realize. Mary's journey also emphasizes the value of perseverance and resilience. Her life was a blend of joy and sorrow, triumph and trials, yet through every season, she remained faithful and steadfast. This aspect of Mary's life encourages us to endure hardships patiently, recognizing that even challenging seasons hold significant spiritual growth opportunities. Mary's unwavering strength under pressure motivates us to maintain hope, trust, and peace even amid life's toughest moments. Ultimately, Mary's story is a vivid illustration of how meaningful our lives can become when rooted deeply in faith. It challenges us to live with intentionality, purpose, and courage, continuously trusting in God's promises even when life feels uncertain or overwhelming. By embodying Mary's example of active, courageous faith, we discover that our lives too can become powerful testimonies of God's faithfulness and love. Reflecting on Mary's experiences compels us to ask ourselves, where is God inviting us to step forward in faith today? Embracing uncertainty, trusting in God's greater plan, and recognizing our profound influence on others enables us to follow Mary's example and actively participate in God's unfolding story for our lives. One intriguing dimension of Mary's story is the significant role Egypt played, both practically and symbolically, in her journey and the broader narrative of salvation history. On the surface, Mary's escape to Egypt with Joseph and Jesus was a necessary flight from danger, an immediate response to Herod's threat. Yet this relocation held much deeper spiritual and historical significance, transforming what initially seemed like a desperate measure into a profound chapter of divine preparation. Egypt, historically seen by the Israelites as a land of bondage and suffering, became, in Mary's story, a place of refuge and safety. This reversal of meaning from a land of slavery to a sanctuary of protection highlights how God can redeem even the darkest circumstances, turning them into opportunities for growth and preparation. Mary's experience in Egypt, away from her familiar surroundings and community, forced her to rely fully on God's guidance and protection. It was a season of dependence, trust, and quiet transformation. This period also foreshadowed Jesus' future ministry, hinting at a mission that would extend far beyond traditional boundaries. In Egypt, the Holy Family encountered a culture vastly different from their own, exposing Jesus early on to diverse peoples and customs. Though the Bible provides limited details of this time, the implications are profound, suggesting that Jesus' early exposure to broader humanity might have shaped his later ministry, enabling him to reach out compassionately to people from diverse backgrounds, including Gentiles and outsiders. Egypt, therefore, was not merely a temporary escape, but a formative environment crucial for Mary and Jesus. Mary's willingness to embrace uncertainty and her trust in God's plan during this difficult period demonstrate the depth of her spiritual maturity. Her experience reveals a powerful truth. Places or seasons in our lives that initially appear difficult or uncomfortable often become the settings where God does some of his most important work within us. Consider our own lives. How often have we found ourselves in situations or Egypts, moments that feel uncertain, uncomfortable, or even painful? Initially, these seasons might feel like setbacks or interruptions to our plans. Yet looking back, many of us recognize that these experiences have profoundly shaped who we are, deepened our character, and refined our faith. I recall a friend who lost her job unexpectedly, plunging her into a season of profound uncertainty and anxiety. Initially devastated, she later described this time as transformative. Like Mary's time in Egypt, this period forced her to trust more deeply, rely on God's provision, and eventually led her to opportunities she had never imagined. Today, she sees that challenging period not as a setback, but as a crucial chapter in her life, a time that prepared her for greater things ahead. The powerful lesson from Mary's journey to Egypt and our own personal Egypts is this: God often uses our seasons of uncertainty, waiting, or discomfort not merely to test us, but to prepare us for something extraordinary. Embracing these difficult moments with faith and openness allows us to see them not as obstacles, but as pathways to deeper spiritual growth and transformation. Just like Mary, when we trust God through our Egypt experiences, we discover strength, purpose, and a profound realization of his faithfulness, shaping our lives into meaningful stories of redemption and grace.